talk about the Megaman series, the first thing people might think is about the famous platformers. But what if I told you there was a series of Megaman games that actually ditched the idea and was actually an RPG? I hate to admit it, but the Megaman Battle Network games were my introduction to the Megaman series. I actually never to this day played one of the platformers. The Battle Network games are some of my favorite games I used to play when I was a kid, but surprisingly I've never actually played the first one. Usually in long-running RPGs, the first game is usually the staple, the one that usually gets people hooked the first time they play it. This can be said true for games like Pokemon, Kingdom Hearts, and maybe even the Final Fantasy series. But however, having already played games down this series, my expectations are not that high. The game has a huge influence from Pokemon, from the way you collect chips to even the way you encounter enemies. But despite all the similarities, the game still holds its own. To collect chips, all you have to do is defeat enemies in battle, simple. The quicker you defeat an enemy, the higher the chance they'll drop a chip. But one of the biggest flaws about the game is how you encounter these enemies, and we'll get to that soon. The game is split between two characters. You play as Lan and Megaman. Lan usually travels outside the world where you can meet people, buy chips from Megaman, and it's where a majority of the story takes place. But however, the combat takes place on the net as you play as Megaman. Every time you take a step on the net, you have a chance of encountering a random generated virus. The viruses are not completely random. Just like Pokemon, the location dictates the type of virus you will fight. But unlike Pokemon, you are always going to encounter a virus no matter what. Think about it like this, it's like walking through the tall grass in Pokemon, but everywhere on the map is tall grass. This can kind of get a little annoying because you don't really benefit from fighting viruses. All you get is the chips that they drop, and sometimes you get a chance of getting some money. There's no level system, and the only way to improve Mega Man is through upgrades that you find around the map. Typically the game is very linear, you just travel through a straight line through the net, with paths that might deviate you to find little items and stuff like that. But in most of the boss stages, you have to solve puzzles that require you to go back and forth from certain areas where I can describe as frustrating hours of trial and error. And what makes it 10 times more frustrating is the spam of viruses you have to defeat as you solve these puzzles. My best advice is play this game through an emulator, because without an emulator, I don't know what I would have done, because there's a certain cheat where you can turn off these wild encounters. When you're in the real world, there's not much incentive to explore it because you don't really benefit from doing so. All you have is shops and other NPCs that you can talk to in battle and possibly win a new chip. Other than that, there's not much to do there. Most of the exploration takes place inside Mega Man's world. The story is based around a man named Dr. Wily who basically wants revenge on Lan's grandfather because he was a better scientist than him. So yeah, the story is kind of mediocre. Other than that, there's little things in the story that actually is worth paying attention to. There was one plot point that I found really interesting that revolved around Mega Man and Lan's relationship, but I don't want to spoil it. I really highly suggest you play it yourself. But what I will say is that the story has a really anticlimactic ending, and I won't spoil it. Like I said, I want you to play it yourself. But let me just say this, you're going to beat the final boss without realizing that he was the final boss. It kind of just ends. The characters are pretty decent, but I can say there's like little to no character development. The characters stay the same from the beginning to the end of the story. I can say that this aspect improves further down in the series, but it just really sticks out in this game. So after completing the first game in the series, it really dawned on me how much these games have evolved. The combat is really good here, but it gets even better down the line. I think the puzzles are way too tedious, and it's made worse with the random encounters. Most of my playtime came straight from those damn puzzles. But the music here is pretty good, but there's no variety. Some of the tracks are used almost every situation, but surprisingly, my favorite track is the title music because it's just really good. So the question is, should you play this game? I say yeah, it's a really good introduction to the series, but I'd highly suggest you play on the emulator, because you need to turn off these random encounters, especially like I said, the puzzles can get really tedious and made worse with the encounters. And do not come into this game thinking about a see an engaging story, because it's not that type of game. The combat is really good in this game, and there's like 100 different combinations of chips that you can collect. And also the boss battles can be a little bit challenging. So if you already played this game, please let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think of the game, and if you played any games down this series, I want to know that too. That's going to do it for the review. Leave a like in the video if you enjoyed, and also subscribe if you're new to the channel. We'll catch you guys in the next video.